Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Cataclismo. So this is going to require a little bit of setup, a bit of preamble, because this sits in an unusual spot. If you're not across it, my current format, the experiment this year, is doing 100 games over the course of a year and ranking them as a review scale from, 1 to 100. We're working our way through the list, it's still early days, but the idea is that I would be able to bump into you on the street and recommend these games in descending order, one after the other. I find this to be a more valuable and useful tool than, say, giving everything 7 out of 10 just so they keep giving you review codes. Like, dare I say, I'm trying to pioneer something that's more customer-centric. Now, I suppose the issue is, as much as I am a variety gamer and I have a very open mind, I will play just about any genre no matter what and enjoy it, there still sits outliers, and Cataclismo kind of sits in that genre. So this is all to say that Cataclismo is as good an example, a 10 out of 10 example of what it is, which is this sort of new age tower defense turned into horde defense, economy building up internally, walls and military men on the outside externally, those sort of games taken to the nth degree long form example where you will spend hours in a mission pausing, stop starting, getting just the right little piece of masonry, and all of the fidelity is there. Like, it's really perfectly done, and in a way it exacerbates all the issues that I have with the genre. So depending on who you are and who you were speaking to, like if this was a wave defense channel or you're a wave defense enthusiast, it's the only game that you play, you get an exception, and I would say this is a kind of must play, drop everything, go get it, right? But if you have misgivings with the genre much as me, you'll find yourself recommending it lower down the list, not necessarily because it's a bad example of an attempt at a genre that I have issue with, but just that there's been so many great games already this year, it's going to sit a bit lower. I hope this makes sense. I know I'm sort of preloading with channel preamble, but at the end of the day, if you're not vibing with a game, no matter how good it is, I'm not going to give a false recommendation. So as far as scoring goes, we're putting it 87%, which is just below Sniper Elite Resistance, which I enjoyed, incidentally. Apparently, if you're a fan of the series, you probably won't like that so much. A bit more of an asset flip half measure, but it was fun for me for a first one. And then below it, we kind of had the catastrophic misfires of the year so far, which is Civ 7 and Avowed. So they're sitting at the bottom of the list for well-earned negativity. This is lower, not because it's necessarily bad, but just because I'd probably recommend all the other stuff because I had more fun with them first. We'll wrap on that, but I hope that makes sense. So what is Cataclismo? Things like They Are Billions is the first example I can think of where it really put this sort of genre on the map. And Age of Darkness, which came out earlier this year, which I haven't looked at, which honestly, in lieu of this review, I don't know if I'd want to. As I said, this is as good an example of this genre, and it's still not enough to convince me that the genre is good. But I think you might get the idea. It's a melding of sort of colony management, building up your eco for throughput for build materials, and then you'll have a night phase where you have to defend against hordes and hordes of dudes. You have to anally build up all your structures and walls and man the walls with all your dudes to shoot down arrows and that, etc. All the build tools and your flexibility with them are top notch. You couldn't ask for more. However, there is a design philosophy built into this game which I think is at odds with what it's trying to achieve, or at the very least, it exacerbates a lot of my issues with it. So you can fiddly build all your little wall bits. I don't know what they're called. I'm not some medieval scholar, but you can, build up your gates and wall pieces and towers and all sorts of stuff. And it actually has some incredibly clever interplay with, like, the strength of a tower is dictated by how many pieces are above it. So the higher up that you make a wall, the stronger it makes all the blocks underneath. It's very clever, and it leads to some methodical decision making in your building. Likewise, you have units, if they are 5 tiles or above the ground, they will get like a damage bonus. But inversely, you've got dudes that want to sit lower. They're more like combat bombers. and they want to sit closer to the ground, maybe you put windows in your walls and that sort of thing. But one of the issues best illustrated is, yes, it's fiddly, yes, there's a lot of design freedom, that's wonderful, but the more tools you give someone and the longer they're going to sort of min-max and get anal about it. And I'm sort of hung up on the last level at my 15 hours in at the moment, and I've re-rolled it and I've had a couple of hours because I'm sort of not critical pathing the way the dev probably wants me to do it. I'm supposed to build my economy a certain way, surely, build at certain checkpoints, put certain units in certain places. It's pretty apparent that as they ramp to the end of the game, and this is an issue with all games, that the system generally gets stressed to get the most out of it and make the sort of finale more difficult. But the problem with that is the cracks show in the gameplay. So I played this last level for several hours. You survive through a couple of nights, and then I get bashed on the last night. And the problem is, where I went wrong is probably baked into that level run like 2 hours earlier. So reloading the previous night wave, 2 of 3 or whatever, isn't going to solve the problem. The problem is I'm probably behind on eco, right? I probably haven't built up my sawmills enough or anything like that. I probably lost some units in the first or second wave that's taken a chunk out of my overall net worth. And so to correct the problem is, at first blush, appearing to be just reload a save 10 minutes earlier. But the truth is you kind of have to restart the whole level again from the beginning. And then you have to kind of build it the right way. So you can feel my frustrations. And again, I'm trying to be kind of dispassionate about it and just convey the issue that I have with the genre. And look, I suppose if you wanted to make it really shorthand, I feel like my time is mine to waste. I play video games for a living, for one of my jobs. I get that, right? It's a frivolous choice of using your time, but it's still my choice to make. And I feel like for all its anal tools and ability to build all these things out, and not just ability to, but requirement to, and then potentially have your 2 hours kind of dashed yet again and having to start over and try and get the critical path correct. This is a misuse of my time that I personally don't volunteer to. Put simply, some people would gladly play 20 hours of Candy Crush, and another person wouldn't understand possibly why they could do it. But at the end of the day, it's still their prerogative and it's their time to waste if they think it's good value. I find myself having a hard time justifying playing any more of this game. And again, to sort of highlight the issue, okay, cool, you come up with this really clever tower, right? It's multiple layers, it's got windows at 5 meters high, maybe it's got covering so the dudes at the top don't get rained on. Maybe you got a fire arrow attachment. So you make this really cool thing. You can blueprint it, so it's got that quality of life tool. But so much of this game is built across all this undulating terrain. It becomes very difficult to wield the blueprint tool in any significant, meaningful way. What I'm sort of getting at is each level, uniquely, I suppose, technically, has unusual terrain that you'll have to choke point against and build around. And the more complex a blueprint that you make so as to save yourself time having to rebuild it, the more likely it becomes kind of a burdensome blueprint in and of itself, and you won't actually have the space or place to put it anywhere in. And that goes for the internal economy as well. This is a top-down design decision to kind of make things need pathways, right? So if you want to build oxygen generators, which is a currency in this game, and it's very novel, it's very clever, but I truly do feel that the example of just because it's clever and novel and interesting doesn't necessarily make it good or fun. But the idea is that you have to draw oxygen from a high point. I'm using my hands. So maybe it has to be like 8 meters off the ground. Otherwise it doesn't work, or it's inefficient. And then you have to build like a spiraling staircase or whatever. You have to make sure that it can path down to the ground. And it can't overlap with other oxygen things. So you've got all these sort of build rules that really fuck with the space that you can work in, and then you'll start a new map and it'll be a totally different limited space that you need to work in, and you have to try and fit all these buildings in. And if you blueprinted them previously, it's probably not really going to work out, not that well. You have to build everything from scratch, brick by brick, generally as a rule. Same even goes for houses, shacks that people are in. They're not just flat roofed things. Like, in a way, the game kind of is encouraging or challenging you to build layer upon layer, something like in Timberborn. Actually, great example, because that is flat roof type stuff, right? You can come up with some really interesting modular designs in Timberborn. It's designed in a player-friendly, let your imagination fill in the gaps, whereas the design principle for here, for like a shack, for example, is It has all chimneys and bits on its roof, but some of it's flat as well. And it's more like, I'm going to use the term antagonistic, but the design is clearly not, hey, let's just give them flat roofs so the player can come up with their own interesting designs. It's, let's give them these weird, difficult to work with roofs, and they have to try and come up with some sort of system. And you know, the way it's made, it's very difficult to come up with a modular shantytown stacking up answer to the problem. And I can't help but see the developers' brushstrokes in that they didn't really add these nubs and knobs to the roofs of their buildings that you want to stack so as to enhance your experience, but more as to be a hurdle with which you need to mount. And so that mixed in with the sort of anal building out of your towers, as magnificent and beautiful as they can look, they're still going to get smashed 2 hours into that mission, and you're still going to have to restart from scratch because going back 10 minutes is not going to change the amount of stone that you had when you didn't have enough, etc. I don't want to go too circular, but I think maybe you're seeing where the issue lies. But otherwise, look, the storytelling's pretty cool and novel. The art direction's beautiful. They've got some missions in there spreading it out, sort of like the Tanya bloody secret agent missions for Command and Conquer, or, you know, playing as just Raynor on his own in StarCraft. Geez, that's bringing back memories. But that is ultimately filler. The core of the game are these levels that you're going to spend an outsized amount of time min-maxing your defenses and your economy and hoping that it's good enough to withstand the end. So look, my hope is, if you've made it this far, and you disagree with me, that I have at least explained in detail what is going on there and how it is in fact best in class, if you want to call it that, of this genre. So if you like this genre, go and get this game, and I heartily hope you enjoy it. But I do think this is an example of a genre that kind of needs work. I could be wrong. This could just be a condemnation of my attention span. I don't really think so, because I've been enjoying sticking with games for longer amount of hours and doing these more review type videos. But yeah, that's about it. A really good game that, as a general rule, I wouldn't recommend to anyone other than those that particularly gravitate towards this genre. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.